Adorama TV presents Digital Photography One-on-One, where we answer your questions. Here's your host, Mark Wallace.
Hi everybody, my name is Mark Wallace. Welcome to this week's episode of Digital Photography One-on-One. We're going to start with a great question from Javier Sanchez. Javier asked, I'm looking at buying my first portrait lighting setup. How many lights should I buy? Well, Javier, that's a great question, and most lighting setups are based on 3 lights and grow from there. There's all kinds of different modifications you can make. But let's start with the basics, and that's called a 3-light setup. A basic 3-light setup is made up of, well, you guessed it, 3 lights. We have a key light, sometimes called a main light, a fill light, and a separation light. And separation light sometimes is called a kicker light, depending on where it is. So let me walk you through a basic 3-light setup. We've got one right behind us. Now this is a setup that you would see maybe for like 8th grade yearbook pictures or something like that. But we're using it because it's very, very simple and it'll be easy for me to sort of go through it. But once we're done with this one, we're going to switch out. We're going to do a different 3-light setup so you can see one that be a little bit more realistic in a studio setting. Let's start with this one. So back here we have our model. Her name is Dawn. And Dawn is lit by this light here. This is our key light or main light. And what the key light does is the foundation for your 3-light setup. So you set this one up first. You make sure you have it set on your model's face and all the shadows are exactly like you want. And then you build around that. So that's what our key light is here. Now our key light is simply illuminating the left side of Dawn's face. Now, the way I have this set up, the left side of her face is going to be lit pretty evenly, but the right side, if I didn't have any fill light, it would have some shadows on it. It'd be a little bit too dark for my taste. And so what we're doing is we're using this, and this is a fill light. So what the fill light is doing is it's coming in and it's lighting up the right side of Dawn's face. Now, the way I've set these up, as far as the power settings goes, I have the fill light using about half as much power as my key light. So it's 1 stop less power than my key light. And that's usually how I have this setup done. So once we have the key light and the fill light, we need to have something to separate our model from the background. Now, you don't always need a separation light, but if you don't have one, what will happen is if you have a person that you're shooting with dark hair on a dark background, well, it'll look like they're bald like me because their hair will just blend right into the background. And so we don't want that. And so we have this separation light here, and I have it where it's just skimming the top of Dawn's head, but it's giving a nice silver outline to Dawn. And that way we can really have her pop from the background. And that's what a separation light does. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a few pictures of this setup, and then we'll show you how that looks. Once we're done, we're going to switch up again, and we're going to have some a fashion setup, and we'll show you a variation of a basic 3-light setup. Well, this is a really nice fashion setup that's simple to set up, and although it only has 2 lights, it's actually a 3-light setup. So let me explain how that works. Our key light is this Profoto 4x6 softbox with a grid, and what I wanted was a really high contrast subject with a splash of color in the background, and because we have this large soft light with a grid, what we're getting is really nice even side light. But because the grid controls the light so much, if I didn't have any fill on the other side of our model, well, it would go completely black. So that's why we have this silver reflector. Now, although this isn't an actual light, it behaves the same way, and so this counts as our fill light. Now, we're going to walk around the other side. I want to show you this grid really fast, because the grid really is the thing that makes this shot happen. This grid is it's a grid that makes sure that the light doesn't spread onto our background, and again, it's really, really directional on our model. And so without this grid, it wouldn't look the same. Okay, now let's talk about our separation light, because in the last scene, we had a separation light that was falling on the back of Dawn. Well, this one, we've done something different. I have this is a Profoto Acute with a snoot. Now what the snoot does is it gives us a nice round narrow beam of light, and I have this being shot onto a blue background, and what that does, instead of pointing a separation light at the back of the model, we're pointing it at a background, and so that illuminated background is going to make Dawn, our model, pop off the background. So let me show you how this is. So I have this pointed right back here at this blue background. Now you can't see it right now because we have all the video lights on, but this is actually projects a nice round soft light, and I really like how it looks. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a couple shots with this setup, and we'll show you how this all looks. Well, that's our episode for this week. But before you go, I want to remind you to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. We update the show every single week. And as always, you can send in your photography questions to me at askmark@adorama.com. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next week.
This episode is brought to you by Adorama TV. Visit the Adorama Learning Center where you'll find photography tips and techniques, links to the gear used in this episode, and related videos. For all the latest photography, video, and computer gear, visit Adorama.com. And the next time you're in New York City, visit our store located on 18th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue.